No, you don't need the.
I'm doing this my way.
He a legend, he a legend, he a legend. He a legend, he a legend, he a legend.
Talking on it though, then
He a
you can't
legend.
it up later.
Welcome to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league of items. Welcome to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league of items.
Pike on money, pike on money, pike on money. We making pike on money. Payday, about to throw a rack on China. Need some DFS advice, where can I find some? League of Items got the sheet with all the lineups and all the stacks that you need to get to diamond. League of Items!
Getting gold, that's the goal. Keep on winning on a roll. Kill 4 dragons, got soul. Now you got nowhere to go. Teleporting top to bot. Dive your carry on the spot. That's an ace. Wreck your base. Wear my crown. We on top.
It's the league, it's the league, it's the league, it's the league, it's the league of items.
League of Items!
Welcome to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league of items. Legend, he a legend, he a legend.
Legend, legend, legend,
legend,
legend, legend.
legend.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Michael with League of Items, and tomorrow we have League of Legends action for the first time since the Mid-Season Cup. The LCL is getting started, and their schedule is insane. They're playing 2 games or 2 matches a day for the next, 2 months or 2.5 months. It's an interesting kind of schedule. It's going to mean a lot of small slates, which is horrible for Draftkings, so hopefully they, figure out some other kind of way to make these make these slates not horrible. Eventually there's going to be LCK and they'll have the hybrid slates between LPL and LCK, but for the first 2 weeks or so we're going to have 2-game slates, and everybody who knows me knows that I hate 2-game slates. So first up, let's get into the first game. I believe the first game tomorrow is going to be EDG against World Elite. So yesterday I had a video that came out talking about the different teams. So let's just make sure we are on the same page. So according to my video that I made yesterday, I would list World Elite as the favorites in this matchup over EDG. I prefer their game style. I prefer their players. I think that overall they're a more talented team. Obviously, by the end of last season, we saw World Elite was playing well and EDG was not playing well. So let's go lane by lane. So we have Audi against Morgan. I think Morgan has the better side of that matchup. Morgan has shown that he is a carry player. He's an import from Korea. The problem with World Elite last year is they really didn't have a good playstyle for most of the split until Galio, Nocturne, and these kinds of champions started being played in professional play by them. And that's because they finally said, listen, if we're gonna lose all these matches, because they weren't doing very well for most of the split, if we're going to lose matches, we might as well lose the matches playing our style. And once they started playing their style and brought in Teacher Ma, they started winning games. So the patch that they're playing on tomorrow, I would assume, is 10.10 or 10.11. Not a huge difference between the 2 patches. There were some Zeal buffs and stuff like that, but the most important part of this is that junglers are still very important. So if you remember from last split, EDG was going back and forth between junglers. World Elite used Beishang for the entire split, I believe. Beishang is a very good player. On the LPL LC in the solo queue ladder, Beishang has been a good player for a long time. And yeah, he's just a talented player. So I'd give the edge to World Elite in the top lane. I'd give the edge to World Elite in the jungle as well. I think that Beishang is definitely better than Junjia, at least from what we've seen so far. Teacher Ma against Scout. I think that it's probably even. I know that Scout was on T1, and for someone like myself who's a big fan of T1, that does hold some weight because their scouting department is amazing, and they must have thought this guy is someone who could eventually take over for Faker, but then Faker just continued to play well, so then he left. So yeah, that is something to watch out for. But in this meta, I think that the playstyle of Teacher Ma is going to be better. Plays Galio, plays Nocturne. I believe he plays Rumble. He should be someone who plays TF. So there's just a lot of champions that fit his playstyle in this current meta, and in order for EDG to ban him out, they're going to have to spend like 5 bans. So red side, he's going to have counter pick. So in this series, he should have counter pick twice. So these are all good advantages for World Elite. In the bot lane, we have Hope and Mako versus Jiaomeng and Missing. So Hope and Mako are more like highly touted players. They've made a name for themselves over the past couple of years on EDG and just like in League of Legends in general. So they're more of known quantities than Jiaomeng and Missing. So I would think that a lot of players prefer EDG's bot lane. But in this meta, I don't see a huge difference being made in the bot lane. Most of these matchups are like Varus versus Aphelios, Varus versus Misfortune, Misfortune versus Aphelios. You get some Senna involved in that sometimes. I think that the team that will win is not going to happen because of the laning phase in bot lane. It's going to happen because of team fights that occur around the dragons, around Baron Pit, and I think that World Elite's playstyle is better in the early game and mid game, better around these objectives. So I would assume that World Elite wins this matchup. Before moving on, let's take a look at some of their champion pools and stuff like that. I did this yesterday, but I'm going to look specifically at the playoffs. Okay, so, or not the playoffs. At the end of the split, EDG and World Elite played each other. World Elite won the series 2 out of 3. We had Jarvan. We had a Galio game, Nocturne game, Galio game. Like I said, Galio, Rumble, Nocturne, Aurelion Soul, apparently. I guess Teacher Ma was known as an Aurelion Soul player, which is another champion that can go from side lane to side lane. He has Pantheon. Just a lot of good champions. So last time EDG played Corki, Lissandra, and Corki. So Corki theoretically should be able to do a little bit of damage to Galio in the laning phase, but Galio has like a magic damage shield, so it doesn't really punish him that bad. Let's take a look at the bans. So 3 bans were used against the mid lane, 3 bans used against the mid lane, 2 bans 2 bans used against the mid lane. So I mean, they have ideas about pick ban that are working well for them. They had Aphelios in all 3 games. At this point, Aphelios was still a broken champion. I think in this matchup, I wanted EDG to win, but I thought that World Elite was probably the better side because everyone loves World Elite for Draftkings. And that's something that we're going to talk about in the later portion of this video. But yeah, I think that World Elite has a better feel for this meta and this patch. So I'm most likely gonna be on their side for this. In the playoffs, Misfortune. Okay, yeah. So like I said, I think that there are big advantages for World Elite in the top lane and there are advantages for World Elite in the top lane and the jungle in terms of talent. In terms of champion pool, I prefer Teacher Ma's champion pool to Scout. Scout's champion pool is more similar to somebody like Knight, who's playing Syndra, Zoe. Those kinds of champions are the ones that he wants to be playing on, but they're not the kind of champion who will often create the winning difference for their team. They're someone who will take advantage of their team being from like a winning position. So yeah, EDG was listed as the favorites. I really don't understand why they were listed as the favorites. I think that World Elite is going to be more popular on DraftKings, is going to be a popular bet because people enjoy World Elite. The only reason why I would play EDG, I think, tonight is to be contrarian against the public, because if the public sentiment is saying that World Elite is good, then that scares me a little bit because I always prefer to be against the public. But that's about it. So yeah, Morgan, we see a lot of Renekton, Wukong, Set Aatrox, Camille, Mordekaiser. Yeah, so Morgan, I think Morgan should be able to create an advantage in the top lane tonight. So let's look at the betting lines. So I have the betting lines on this sheet as well. All right, so first game. Let's do the second game before I get into that, I guess. So the second matchup is LNG versus Sunning. So based off of what we saw last split, neither team was very good, right? In my video yesterday, I was thinking about some of the changes that are going to happen with these patches that are coming up, and I expect to how I expect the meta to move a little bit. It's difficult to project, and it's not always the best way to look at it, but I think that Sunning is going to have a much better split than they did last split, because their playstyle is very dependent on their AD carry being in a winning position. So they're often going to draft with that in mind, and they're going to play team fight compositions that give him all of the resources the Huanfeng needs in order to carry the game. The other potential development is that the meta continues to get pushed in that direction, so the better champions will fit into team fight compositions, and the more that it moves in that direction, the better Sunning is going to be. So if Sunning was going to lose a match, I guess it would kind of be in the beginning of the season. So what I was saying is that I think that we need Sunning to have an early schedule in the beginning of the season in order to potentially put a bet on them to win the championship. Now, it's like, what, plus 7,000 or something like that. It's very unlikely, but I think that when you compare them to a lot of the other teams in the LPL, they have the team fighting playstyle that not everyone is going to completely index into. So even if team fight compositions were the best compositions possible, I couldn't really see a team like JDG playing that style well. Well, okay, so I could, but we haven't seen them do it. Most of their wins have been through gaining an early lead and then winning from that position. So they could do it, but I'd have to see that to believe that they could do it consistently. Because even if you take a look at the games from the spring split, and then you show me a team fight and you say, oh, look at, they're team fighting right here, look how good they are. Team fight, in the way that I'm saying, we're using the word team fight, is about a front to back team fight where everyone is focused on the AD carries, trying to peel for the AD carries, kill the opposing tanks, and have a front to back team fight, which is much more structured, much more organized, and will bring down the kill scores for games. Usually bring down the kill scores for games, because the team with the hyper carry, so somebody like Huanfeng, isn't going to want to introduce variance into the game state. They're going to want to make trades across the map, scale up, and then force the other team to fight them at a dragon, at Baron Pit, and win the game that way. So if we're going lane by lane, Chenlun 17 against Bin, I think Chenlun 17 played decently at the end of the split. He's not filling in, I think he's replacing Flandre, and Flandre was one of the top laners for years in the LPL. He's not the shy, but he kind of played in that vein where he was a carry top laner, very volatile. So this is an interesting change. I'm not sure really how to feel about this. In the jungle, we have XX and S of M. I'm not a huge fan of either jungler, really. I don't think that they are the winning difference if they're playing against a team with a good jungler. So if they're playing against someone like LGD, even though they're theoretically similar teams in terms of skill level, I'd rather have the team with Peanut than S of M or XX. In the mid lane, we have Angel and Maple. Both of these mid laners are a little overrated right now. Maybe not overrated. Maple's overrated. Angel is still kind of an unknown quantity, because his team with Sunning has been kind of focused around Huanfeng. So if you're still playing an AD carry centric team composition in a non-ADC meta, then no one's really going to look as good as they should. Then in the bot lane, we have Light and Iwandi versus Huanfeng and Sword Art. I think there's a huge advantage in the bot lane for Huanfeng and Sword Art, so I would expect this game specifically, Sunning to play into their bot lane matchup and LNG to try to create a win on the other side of the map, because if they're reactively making plays in the bot lane or trying to help Light and Diwandi get back into the game, that's going to be like wasting resources. One of the main fundamental principles of League of Legends is playing through your strong side of the map and abandoning your weak side of the map. Just like let them fend for themselves is basically what that means. And yeah, let's look at the champions. So that was an aggressive video. Match history. LNG. So LNG at the end of the split had Shenlong 17 in. So he played Mordekaiser, Aatrox, Jax, and Ornn. So still semi-carry, but not like Flandre. Then we have Sunning, Renekton. Renekton's okay. I'm not the biggest fan of Renekton. I think that it's just not. It's kind of a snowbally champion. It falls off late game. I'm not a huge fan of that. Bin had Mordekaiser, Aatrox, Akali. Interesting. They lost. Renekton, Ornn, Wukong, Renekton. So if they're playing through the bot lane, I would expect to see something more like an Ornn. I could see a Mordekaiser in a carry composition. I think that could be pretty good. I could see. Okay, so Sunning played Janna top when that was kind of broken in the same way that Soraka top was. So I could actually see them like using a Soraka top in this upcoming match if they're gonna play kind of like a hyper carry team composition. And I'm very interested to see what kind of team compositions are pulled out by a team like Sunning, because they will be the early adopters of hyper carry teams. But I don't know if it's justified yet. I think that the meta, the way it's constructed right now, and what's popular, is going to still make junglers the most important player on the map for the early and mid game to get that advantage for the late game. And if those champions are still strong, like Kindred, Graves, Nidalee, they're going to be a level or two above the AD carry for most of the game, making it more difficult for them to carry, because there's just so much threat. So that is interesting. They have played Xayah Rakan in the past. I think Xayah received a buff on 10.11, and then she's also going to receive a buff on 10.12. Or maybe it was a few patches ago that she got a buff, or a slight change. Otherwise, she just got the zeal buff and the health buff that everyone else got, so it's really like a net neutral. So that's basically it. I think it's obvious that I like Sunning. In my video yesterday, I said that they are one of my sleeper teams to really outperform by the end of the season because of that potential shift into an AD carry meta. So they're in my third tier, which means like they can be a little better or a little worse. It's really like the top three, then Invictus Gaming, who's still like a legacy top team, just because until they're proven to not be one of the top 4 teams, I'm going to leave them there. And then you have some overvalued teams like eStar and RNG. And then the teams that I think are volatile but have high upside are LGD, World Elite, and Sunning. So I'm going to be on those teams in the beginning of the split and just see what happens. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm not going to cry about it. But yeah, so I do like Sunning. They're at plus 7,000 right now. I don't think that's a good bet really for the future, because like it takes a lot of time for that money that you invest into it now to become something. But yeah, so looking at my betting slip, I do plan on betting on World Elite tonight, 1 unit. I think that like there isn't a ton of well, actually, so I do think there is actually value on World Elite. I think World Elite should be I think this line should be reversed. I think World Elite should be about minus 170 and they're plus 130. So you're getting a ton of value, about 20 points of value. I think that in the long run, World Elite is going to be trending in the right direction, especially on this patch in this meta. So unless I have a bad read on the meta and they come out tonight and start playing hyper carry compositions and World Elite abandons like playing global mid laners and stuff like that, that's the only way I see this going sideways. So I do think that, especially in a 3-game series, I like World Elite and their consistency in this meta because they've proven to be better in this meta. Just one last thing I guess that I should check is Audi Junjia. Yeah, so they kept going back and forth between which jungler they were using. I know that there was a coronavirus situation with their team, but it went from Junjia to GG, or Jai. I forget how to pronounce it. And now they're back on Junjia. So Junjia did play Graves. That is a positive. But the rest of this just doesn't look like I'm interested in it. That is interesting. Maybe I'm wrong about their jungler, but I think that World Elite has more advantages in more places anyways, so I still prefer that side of things. Beishang greater than signed Junjia. So like I said, I will be betting on World Elite tonight. 1 unit, so it'll be 1 unit to win 1.37 units. And the reason is because I think they should be the favorite. So like I said, it gives you a ton of value. LPL Game 2, Sunning against LNG. I think that Sunning should be the favorite. I think that Sunning should be a large favorite. But until I know how Sunning is going to be able to play on this patch, I don't feel comfortable laying minus 193. I feel like there's just no value in that spot, so it's going to be a no bet for me. If I had to pick a side, I would pick the Sunning side. I think they are the most likely team to win on this slate, so I do want that side. I think that the reasons are clear. Lastly, let's take a look at Draftkings. So for the teams, EDG is the biggest favorite on the slate. Sunning is the second biggest favorite on the slate. I think that Sunning should be the biggest favorite on the slate, and that World Elite should be the second favorite on the slate. So we do have a lot of a big difference of opinion with the market itself. However, I do anticipate players on DraftKings to use Sunning as like their primary stack, and World Elite as their secondary stack, and then rotate players between those two teams and flip them. So the most popular players, I think, in general, are going to be Sunning and World Elite. Contrarian options, EDG and LNG. I think LNG will be the lowest owned team on the night. I think it'll go probably Sunning, World Elite, EDG, LNG. In terms of pricing, EDG, Sunning, LNG, World Elite, EDG, Sunning, and then you see Beishang is up higher than XX in this spot because he does actually perform pretty well for a jungler often. So in the top lane we have the same thing as the team slot, reflects their odds. EDG, Sunning, LNG, World Elite. In the jungle we see EDG, Sunning, World Elite, LNG. So we have the two bottom teams flipped. In the mid lane, we have Sunning as the highest priced mid laner. Scout is second, Maple is third, and Teacher Ma is fourth. So that doesn't make a lot of sense to me because if Beishang is playing well and scoring a lot of points, then Teacher Ma should also be scoring a lot of points. I think those two players will have a high correlation for the early part of this split if we're on the same patch as last season. Now, like, Morgan could kind of eat into that if he is carrying games and they're playing through the top side, but I think that their mid jungle duo is still going to be the most important part of that team. In the AD carry position, we have EDG, Sunning, World Elite, and Longzhu. So again, we have, similar to the jungle spot, we have World Elite priced higher than LNG, which is going to make some of these stacks a little more difficult to put together. Probably going to be a good mid-captain night. Actually, maybe not. You will want Huan Feng. Okay, so we have EDG, Sunning, World Elite, LNG. So in the jungle, AD carry, and support positions, we have World Elite as the third highest team. In all the other spots, they are the lowest rated team. I think that on a 2-game slate, some of the things we have to remember is game stacks are always an option. It is scary, and you're not going to get 7 players with a potential game not played bonus, which is really what you want. But if like all 3 of the games get into like 20 to 15 range, then you're going to probably need that to win. Do I think that's likely with EDG and World Elite? So World Elite is more of a global ultimate skirmishing, fighting around Dragon, fighting around Rift Herald team. EDG is more of a traditional team composition. So the benefit in that situation is World Elite, because World Elite is going to hopefully have a lead. EDG will consistently try to defend like a traditional team normally would, and that would allow World Elite to have a higher kill upside. So I do like World Elite a lot. In terms of the exposure that I expect to have, I would think that World Elite and Sunning are going to be similarly owned in my lineups, and then I might get a little hedge with EDG because I think that Sunning is just a better team than LNG. So I don't see myself picking any LNG players tonight, except for like an obscure hedge. But I don't think that's really worth it in the long run. One thing that I want to do this season is kind of trust myself more and hedge less. I typically do very well in the beginning of seasons, especially in larger slates, like where there's 5 games going or 6 games going, because I'm willing to like pick my spots differently from most people. On 2-game slates, it really reduces a lot of what I'm good at, because it's just highly variant, and like it's just tough. Like, I don't like best of 3s as much as best of 1s either, but I'm just trying to pick the winners, and hopefully that'll give me a decent return on my money over time. So in terms of captain ownership, I think that Huan Feng is going to be extremely highly owned. I think that Zhao Meng will be very highly owned. I think Teacher Ma will be highly owned as well. I think that junglers will probably be underrepresented in the captain position, and I think the same thing will happen for top lane. So top lane and jungler are probably undervalued in the captain position tonight. It is a less likely outcome, but we've seen it before, especially on 2-game slates where the top laner the top laner could have 1 game where they carry the entire game. Like, I could see someone like Morgan doing that. And then in the second game, they could play a different kind of champion that is more of a team fighter and have a ton of assists and still have a very high score. So they don't necessarily need to carry the game to have a good DraftKings score, but it does help a lot. So that's really all I've got for you today. I want to let everybody know that I'm going to be posting a video every single day during the LPL season for like every single slate. So I'm going to go over games every single day, and I have a couple ideas of different kinds of like segments I want to do, so I'm going to see how that one works out. But I need to have game footage, and I need to have like contest results and stuff like that before I can give you the full taste of what it's going to be. So look out for that tomorrow. If you have any suggestions about different kinds of content you want to see, I'd love to hear about it. Throw it in the comment section. If you have a question about League of Legends or about DraftKings, anything like that, feel free to put it in the comment section. I will either reply to you directly, or I'll make a video about it. I love making videos for those kinds of reasons, so never be afraid to reach out. Direct messages are typically open as well, or are they open? Yeah, so like they're open, so you can send me a message. I get a message request, and like ask anybody. I respond to everything. So again, thanks for watching. I will probably have an article out on SBR Sports Picks, their website. I need to get the link set up. I'll throw that in my in the comment section, and then I'm assuming I'll have a video with Kyle on his channel, DFS Bachelor, as well. So again, thanks for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe. Check me out on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. Retweets are great. And on that note, I'll see you tomorrow.
No, you don't need the.
I'm doing this my way.
He a legend, he a legend, he a legend. He a legend, he a legend, he a legend.
Walking on it though, then
He a
you're gonna put it up
legend.
later.
Welcome to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league. Welcome to the league, to the league.
Pico money, Pico money, Pico money. We making Pico money. Payday, about to throw a rack on China. Need some DFS advice, where can I find some? League of Items got the sheet with all the lineups and all the stacks that you need to get to diamond. League of